Three things were true the moment the witness walked in. 1. Daniel Hayes was about to lose everything. 2. The prosecution didn't need evidence anymore, only a story. And 3. The man limping toward the stand wasn't supposed to be alive, because the name on the docket said Michael Rowan. And Daniel Hayes had buried that name when he was 12, not in a file, not in a drawer, in his nervous system. Here's the question that ruins people. What if the person accusing you is the reason you became who you are? And here's the promise: quiet, inevitable. Before this day ends, this courtroom will stop being a courtroom and become a confession booth. The judge enters, robe, gravity, no warmth. Courtroom 7B doesn't feel like a room. It feels like a sealed container, where reputations are crushed into something true enough to sentence. Daniel sits at the defense table in a suit that fits his body, but not his life anymore. 8 months ago, he was the founder of Kessler Aeronautics, a man who built a company with his own hands and a borrowed laptop. Now he's a headline: corporate espionage, national security breach, sabotage. They said he sold secrets. And the cruel part, the evidence doesn't look like a lie. It looks like a map, leading only to him. Access logs, encrypted transfers, a whistleblower email that reads like a last prayer. But Daniel has one thing evidence can't print: a feeling. A sharp, wrong feeling that says, this isn't a trial. This is a cleanup. Victor Langford stands for the prosecution. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. Men like Victor don't win by shouting. They win by making the room agree with them before they even speak. Your Honor, he says, smooth as a blade, today we present our final witness, the man who will confirm beyond doubt that Mr. Hayes orchestrated the breach. A pause, just long enough for everyone to lean forward. A murmur crawls through the gallery like wind through grass. Daniel's wife, Mara, sits behind him. She doesn't hold his hand. She holds her own. And if you've ever been loved by someone who suddenly isn't sure, you know that silence is louder than a verdict. The bailiff opens the side door. An older man walks in, gray suit, thinning hair, slight limp. He looks ordinary, and that's what makes it worse. Because the most dangerous people rarely look dangerous. Daniel's breathing changes before his mind can explain it. His eyes lock onto the man's walk, not the face, the walk. Your body remembers what your brain tries to bury. The witness approaches the stand. The clerk asks, "State your name for the record." The man clears his throat. Michael Rowan. And somewhere behind Daniel's ribs, something ancient wakes up. Rowan. The name his father whispered the night before he died. The name Daniel hadn't said out loud since childhood because saying it felt like inviting something back. He looks closer. There's a scar near the left eyebrow. Daniel has seen it before, not in person. In an old photograph he wasn't supposed to find. His father, smiling at a rally, arms slung over a man's shoulder. That man had the same scar, the same eyes, a dead man's eyes. Except the dead man is sitting under oath. Victor steps toward the witness like he's greeting a weapon he personally polished. "Mr. Rowan," he says, "explain your connection to Kessler Aeronautics." Rowan's voice is calm, technical, controlled. "I was contracted, cybersecurity consultant, brought in after an anonymous tip suggested internal compromise." "Tip from whom?" Rowan hesitates, just a half beat. "A source protected under agreement." Curiosity stacks on itself instantly. Protected by who? Why now? And why does Rowan look like he's counting his words? Victor continues, "What did you discover?" Rowan's eyes flicker toward Daniel, then away, as if eye contact might spill something. "I discovered Mr. Hayes rerouted encrypted prototype files to an offshore server registered under a shell corporation. The gallery reacts like one organism. A soft gasp, a shifting of bodies, a tiny collective decision being made. Daniel feels the air thin. Victor says, "Can you explain your method of tracing the breach?" Rowan begins to describe it. Mirrored proxy chains, timestamp masking, encryption layering. It's brilliant, it's surgical, and it's not Daniel. Because Daniel built planes, not traps. He knows security, yes, but this is ghost work. This is intelligence-grade misdirection. And Daniel's mind does something terrifying. It recognizes the pattern, not from his company, from his childhood, from his father's work, from the way his father used to speak at night, quietly like walls could hear. "There are men who build empires by destroying truth," his father once said. And now one of those men is under oath, pointing at Daniel like a gun. Victor asks the question that should be routine. "Mr. Rowan, have you ever met the defendant before this investigation?" Rowan's throat tightens. Just enough. "No." One word. A clean lie. Daniel's lawyer grips his arm, whispering, "Don't react." But Daniel's pulse says, "React." Because the lie isn't just about meeting. It's about ownership. Rowan knows him. Rowan is looking at the product of something he helped create. Daniel stands. "I object." His lawyer hisses, "Daniel, sit down." Daniel doesn't. His voice cracks, then steadies. He's lying. Judge Whitmore's gavel slams. "Mr. Hayes, one more outburst and I will remove you." But Daniel can't take his eyes off Rowan. Because this trial isn't about money. It's about lineage. It's about what happens when a boy grows up and becomes a man and meets the person who erased his father. Then Daniel does something reckless and necessary. "Your Honor," he says, "I request permission to cross-examine the witness myself." His attorney looks like he might faint. Victor Langford smiles, barely, like a man watching someone step onto a mine. Judge Whitmore studies Daniel. "You understand the risk?" "Yes." "You will be held to legal standards." "I understand." A long pause. "Granted." And just like that, Daniel walks toward the stand, as if walking toward a grave that decided to open. Up close, Rowan looks older than the photograph, but the scar is the same, the eyes are the same. The kind of eyes that don't apologize, they calculate. Daniel's voice lowers. "Mr. Rowan," he says, "you testified you've never met me." Rowan nods. "Correct." Daniel nods too, slowly, like he's letting the room settle. "Did you ever know a journalist named Thomas Hayes?" Victor shoots up. "Objection, relevance." Daniel doesn't blink. "Credibility." Judge Whitmore. "Overruled." Answer. Rowan's jaw tightens. "I've met many journalists." Daniel steps closer. "Did you know my father?" A silence falls so hard, it feels manufactured. Rowan's hands shift on the rail. Small movement, nervous. "I may have encountered him professionally." Daniel's next question lands like a blade placed gently on skin. "Did you encounter him the night before he died?" Victor. "Objection." Judge Whitmore. "Overruled." Rowan's composure slips, just a hairline fracture. And Daniel sees it. Fear. Not of Daniel, of what Daniel might say next. Because truth, once spoken in a room like this, doesn't only convict one person. It convicts a system. Daniel changes angle. Attention wave. "You described the breach method," he says calmly. "Proxy mirroring. Timestamp masking." Rowan nods. Daniel's voice becomes quieter, more dangerous. "You're right. It's brilliant." Rowan doesn't respond. Daniel continues. "And it's the same method my father was investigating before he died." The courtroom doesn't gasp this time. It freezes. Even the judge leans forward. Daniel looks at Rowan as if he's speaking to the past itself. "You didn't disappear 22 years ago, Daniel says. You were extracted. Victor. Baseless. Daniel ignores him. Tell them, Daniel says, who you really are. Rowan's mouth opens and closes. He's fighting something, not guilt, a rule, a leash. And then Daniel says the sentence that turns the room inside out. You didn't betray my company. He pauses. You betrayed my father. Rowan's eyes flicker, and for the first time, the witness doesn't look like a witness. He looks like a man trying to remember which identity he's wearing. And that's where the real trial begins. End of part 1. Retention loop. Because the next question isn't whether Daniel is guilty. It's this. If Rowan is alive, who decided Daniel's father had to die? There is a moment in every courtroom when the truth stops behaving like evidence and starts behaving like a threat. This was that moment. Daniel Hayes stood 3 feet from the witness stand, close enough to see the pulse in Michael Rowan's neck, close enough to see that it wasn't steady. You didn't betray my company, Daniel had said. You betrayed my father. The words didn't echo. They landed. And when they landed, something shifted in the room. Not opinion, power. Rowan's fingers tightened around the wooden rail. Not defensive, measured, like a man deciding which version of himself to release. Victor Langford rose slowly. Your Honor, this line of questioning is speculative and inflammatory. The judge didn't answer immediately. She was watching Rowan. And judges, when they stop looking at the lawyer and start looking at the witness, know something. Answer the question, she said quietly. Rowan inhaled. I did not betray Thomas Hayes. He said it carefully. Too carefully. Daniel tilted his head slightly. You didn't betray him? He asked. No. Then why did you disappear the day after he died? Victor again. Objection. Overruled. Rowan's jaw flexed. I was reassigned. The word felt foreign in a civilian courtroom. Reassigned, not transferred, not relocated. Reassigned. Daniel didn't blink. By who? Silence. Not the kind that waits for an answer, the kind that blocks one. Rowan glanced toward Victor. It was subtle, but it was there. And Daniel saw something that rearranged the entire trial in his mind. The prosecution wasn't using Rowan. They were protecting him. Daniel shifted his weight. New angle. You testified that I created a shell corporation to move files offshore. Yes. And you traced that shell corporation personally? Yes. Daniel nodded slowly. Under what authority? Victor's voice sharpened. He was contracted. Daniel cut him off. I didn't ask you. The room stirred. The judge allowed it. Rowan's lips parted, then closed, then parted again. Federal cooperation. A ripple. Daniel's heart didn't race. It slowed, because that answer did something dangerous. It validated his worst suspicion. You were embedded inside my company, Daniel said calmly, for security purposes. Security from who? No answer. Daniel leaned closer. From me. Rowan held his gaze now, and for the first time since entering the courtroom, his expression changed. Not guilt, not shame, recognition. Daniel, Rowan said softly. The first time he had used his name. The gallery noticed. The judge noticed. Daniel felt it like a voltage change. You don't understand what you stepped into? The sentence hit harder than an accusation because it wasn't about crime. It was about scale. Daniel's voice remained steady. Then explain it. Rowan hesitated, and that hesitation said more than any testimony so far. Victor rose quickly. Your Honor, I move to strike that statement. Denied. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Rowan, she said, clarify what you mean. Rowan looked at her, then at Daniel, and something old flickered in his eyes. "You built something extraordinary," Rowan said, "but you built it on a fault line." The words moved through the courtroom like a quiet tremor. Daniel frowned slightly. "A fault line of what?" Rowan swallowed. "Of history." The air shifted again. Because now this wasn't about encrypted files. It wasn't about offshore servers. It was about inheritance. Daniel's inheritance. "You approached my father," Daniel said slowly. "You worked with him." "Yes." "And the night before he died, you argued." Rowan didn't answer. Daniel pressed. "He told you he would publish alone." Victor's chair scraped sharply against the floor. "Objection!" "Sit down," the judge said, not looking at him. Rowan's composure thinned. He was warned. Daniel felt the floor tilt beneath him. Warned about what? Rowan's eyes hardened. About going public. With what? Another silence, then with Project Mirror. The name entered the courtroom like contraband. No one in the gallery understood it, but Daniel did, because he had heard those two words once before, when he was 13, spoken through a kitchen doorway, low, urgent, fear wrapped in restraint. Project Mirror. Daniel's voice lost its courtroom polish. "What is Project Mirror?" Victor's face had gone pale. "Your Honor, this line of questioning involves classified—" "Answer the question," the judge said again. Rowan exhaled slowly. "It was an initiative," he said, "designed to predict behavioral risk in high-clearance individuals." Daniel blinked. "Predict?" "Through pattern mapping." "Pattern mapping of what?" "Digital behavior, social behavior, psychological profiles." The gallery began to murmur, because now the word espionage meant something else. "You're saying," Daniel said carefully, "my company was built on predictive surveillance?" Rowan held his eyes. "I'm saying," he replied, "your company was selected." The room didn't breathe. Selected. Daniel felt something shift inside him, not anger, alignment, because suddenly the past and the present snapped into place. The breach, the anonymous tip, the perfect evidence. This wasn't a crime. It was containment. "You embedded yourself in my company," Daniel said slowly. "To monitor me." "Yes." "Why?" Rowan's answer came softer now. "Because you were always part of the model." The words didn't just land, they detonated. Daniel's fingers curled slightly. "The model for what?" Rowan's voice dropped. "For escalation." The courtroom dissolved into noise. The judge's gavel struck twice. "Order." But the damage was done. Daniel felt something terrifying crawl up his spine. "You believed I would become a threat," he said. Rowan didn't correct him. He didn't need to. Daniel's mind replayed every milestone of his life. The scholarships, the grants, the early investors who seemed to appear at exactly the right time, the government contracts offered faster than they should have been. It hadn't been luck. It had been design. "You built me," Daniel whispered. Rowan's expression shifted, not pride, not triumph, regret. "We monitored variables," Rowan said. "You exceeded projections." The gallery reacted again. Exceeded, not failed. Exceeded. Daniel let that settle. "You sabotaged my company," he said. Rowan shook his head slowly. "No." "Then who did?" Rowan didn't answer immediately, and that pause was more dangerous than any confession, because it meant the breach was real, and someone else had moved inside the system. "You weren't the only one selected," Rowan finally said. The words slid into the room like ice water. Daniel's mind sharpened instantly. "Selected for what?" Rowan looked toward the judge, then back at Daniel. "For influence." A chill rippled across the gallery. "Influence over what?" Daniel pressed. Rowan's voice lowered almost to a whisper. "Over national decision thresholds." The phrase was clinical. but its implication was monstrous. Daniel swallowed. "You're saying I was being groomed?" "Yes. And when I didn't follow the projected path?" Rowan didn't blink. "You were corrected." The word felt surgical, clean, bloodless. "Corrected?" Daniel stared at him. "By framing me?" Rowan's silence answered. Victor Langford stood abruptly. "Your Honor, I request a recess." But the judge wasn't looking at him. She was staring at Rowan. And something in her expression had changed. Recognition, not of the story, of the structure. She had heard of Project Mirror before. Daniel saw it. A flicker in her eyes, a buried memory, which meant this wasn't just about his father or him. It reached into the bench, into the robe, into the system that claimed neutrality. Daniel leaned in one final time. "You told this court you never met me," he said, and quietly. Rowan held his gaze. "I didn't meet you," he replied. "I monitored you." The distinction shattered the illusion of coincidence. Because meeting is human, monitoring is design. Daniel stepped back, and in that step, something irreversible settled inside him. He wasn't fighting a charge. He was confronting authorship, and the worst part? He didn't yet know who was holding the pen. The judge called for recess. The gavel struck. The room exploded into noise. Reporters surged forward. Victor moved toward Rowan urgently. Daniel turned slowly toward the gallery. His eyes found Mara. She wasn't confused. She wasn't afraid. She was calculating, and that terrified him more than anything Rowan had said. Because if Project Mirror selected people for influence, what if it selected partners too? As the bailiff moved him toward the side exit, Daniel's mind looped around one phrase. "You exceeded projections." Exceeded how? More ambitious? More ethical? More unpredictable? And if he was a variable in a model, who else was? The judge, the prosecutor, his wife? You? The door to the holding corridor opened. Daniel stepped through. And as it closed behind him, Rowan's final words echoed, "You were never meant to know." But Daniel did know one thing now. His father hadn't died for exposing a story. He had died for exposing a system. And that system was still alive, still watching, still predicting, still correcting. And here's the question that changes everything. If Daniel was built to become a threat, then who built the breach that finally triggered his correction? Because that person wasn't in the past. They're in the room. And next, Daniel is going to find them. The first thing they take from you when you become dangerous is time. Not your freedom, not your voice. Time. Because when you don't have time, you don't think, you react. And when you react, you make mistakes. Daniel Hayes understood that now. The holding corridor outside courtroom 7B smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper, a place designed to feel temporary even when it wasn't. Two marshals walked beside him, neutral faces, neutral steps, neutral eyes that said, "We don't choose sides, we escort outcomes." Behind him, the courtroom buzzed with 1,000 whispered versions of the same question. What is Project Mirror? Ahead of him, a steel door waited. Behind that door, answers would either sharpen him or break him. The door opened. Inside, a small conference room. Table bolted to the floor. 2 chairs. A wall clock that ticked louder than it should. Mara stood near the far wall. His wife. Her posture was perfect. Shoulders straight, chin lifted. The way she stood when she was preparing for something difficult or dangerous. She turned slowly. Their eyes met. For a moment, the world narrowed to the two of them. No judge, no witness, no Project Mirror. Just husband and wife. "You didn't tell me," she said quietly. Daniel blinked. "I didn't know." She studied him carefully, not searching for truth, measuring probability. "You knew something was wrong," she said. That's not the same as knowing I was part of an experiment. The word hung between them. Experiment. It made everything feel smaller, less human, more engineered. Mara stepped closer. You accused him of killing your father, she said, in open court. He disappeared the day after. That doesn't mean he killed him. No, Daniel said softly. But it means he knows who did. She crossed her arms, a defensive gesture, or a protective one. It was hard to tell now. You're spiraling, she said. I'm aligning, he corrected. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You sound different. Because I understand the rules now. And what rules are those? Daniel's voice dropped. That none of this is random. Silence stretched. The clock ticked. Mara looked away briefly, and in that tiny moment, barely a fraction of a second, Daniel felt something shift. Because Mara didn't look surprised. She looked familiar with the idea. You knew about Project Mirror, Daniel said. It wasn't a question. She didn't answer immediately. Her fingers brushed the edge of the table. I knew pieces, she said finally. The words landed like glass breaking. You knew pieces, Daniel repeated slowly. I didn't know you were a target. Subject, he corrected again. The correction felt involuntary, as if his identity was being rewritten in real time. Mara sighed. It wasn't supposed to become this. The phrase froze him. Not I didn't know. Not I'm shocked. It wasn't supposed to become this. Who told you? Daniel asked quietly. She hesitated, and that hesitation was louder than any confession. Outside the room, footsteps passed, voices murmured. Time compressed again. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Were you placed in my life? The question felt impossible, cruel, necessary. Mara's eyes filled, not with tears but with something heavier. Anger. Don't do that, she said. Answer me. Her voice sharpened. I chose you. Not no, not a denial, a reframing. Daniel felt the floor shift beneath him. Did they introduce us? Mara looked down. The clock ticked louder. Yes, she said finally. The word cut cleanly. Daniel's breath slowed, not because he was calm, because shock removes oxygen. They introduced us, he repeated. They believed you would stabilize with emotional grounding. The clinical language hit harder than betrayal. Stabilize, emotional grounding. He wasn't a partner. He was a variable. Daniel laughed once. A short, disbelieving sound. So, my marriage was a calibration tool. Mara stepped forward. No. Yes. I fell in love with you, she said fiercely. And that makes it better? It makes it real. Daniel searched her face. He wanted to see manipulation. He wanted clarity. But all he saw was complexity, which was worse. The door opened. Daniel's lawyer entered quickly, face flushed. We have a problem. Daniel turned. What now? The judge requested a private conference with Rowan. Daniel's chest tightened. When? Right now. Mara frowned. That's unusual. It's unprecedented, the lawyer corrected, and Victor Langford was excluded. Daniel's mind accelerated. The judge, Project Mirror, recognition in her eyes earlier. A private meeting. Pieces began sliding into place. If she knows something, Daniel murmured. She might shut this down before it reaches public record, the lawyer said grimly. Containment. Another correction. Another silence. Daniel stood. I need to hear that conversation. You can't, the lawyer said immediately. Daniel's gaze sharpened. I can. The hallway outside buzzed with controlled chaos, reporters held back by security, staff whispering urgently. Daniel walked with purpose now, not reacting, hunting. Near the judge's chambers, 2 guards stood. Closed door, no sound escaping. Daniel stopped, listened. Nothing. He glanced at Mara. She understood before he spoke. "You're not thinking clearly," she said quietly. "I've never thought clearer. You'll be arrested." "I already was." The guards shifted slightly as he stepped closer. "Mr. Hayes," one said, firm but polite. "No entry." Daniel nodded, then turned slightly away as if complying, and in that moment, he heard it. Through the door. Faint. Rowan's voice. He wasn't meant to survive exposure. Daniel's heart slammed. The guard glanced at him. Too late. Daniel's focus sharpened like a blade. The judge's voice followed. Lower. Controlled. "You told me the program was decommissioned," Rowan replied. "It was supposed to be." Supposed to be. Daniel's pulse roared, because that meant something still active, something off script. "You said containment protocols were final," the judge continued. "They were." "Then who authorized escalation?" Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Daniel leaned closer. "Who?" the judge demanded again. Rowan's answer came softer. "I don't know." The words felt like a lie, or a fear. Daniel stepped back slowly. His mind raced. If Rowan didn't know, then someone higher was moving pieces without oversight, which meant the breach, the trial, the correction wasn't just institutional. It was personal. Someone wanted him removed, and someone else was afraid of that. The door opened suddenly. The judge stepped out. Her eyes landed directly on Daniel, not surprised, not angry, prepared. "Mr. Hayes," she said calmly, "you shouldn't be here." Daniel met her gaze. "You know about Project Mirror?" She held his eyes, long enough for truth to pass silently between them. "Yes," she said. The word felt heavier than any verdict. "And you're part of it," Daniel added. Another pause. Then, "I was," she corrected, past tense, which meant she escaped, or believed she had. "Then tell me," Daniel said quietly, "who's still running it?" The judge didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked toward the courtroom, toward the chaos waiting beyond, toward something bigger than one trial. "Someone who isn't supposed to exist," she said finally. The phrase settled like fog. Daniel felt a chill spread through him. "Who?" Her voice dropped. "A subject who learned to write the model instead of follow it." The implication hit instantly. Not a watcher, not a handler. A participant who became the architect. Someone inside the system. Someone like... Daniel's thoughts stopped, because a terrifying possibility rose. Someone close, someone trusted. The judge stepped aside. "Court resumes in 5 minutes," she said, "and when it does, the next witness will change everything." Daniel swallowed. "Who is it?" She held his gaze, and for the first time, he saw uncertainty in her eyes. "Your co-founder." The name hit before she even said it. Lena Kessler, the person who built the company with him. The one person he never suspected. And here's the question that turned suspicion into betrayal. If Project Mirror needed someone to watch Daniel, why would it choose someone who already knew him better than anyone else? Because the next witness isn't just someone from his past. She's the one person who knows the version of him before the system ever touched him. There is a moment in every trial when reality shifts, not because new facts appear, but because the story everyone believed suddenly stops making sense. When Lena Kessler walked into courtroom 7B, that moment arrived, and nobody realized it yet. Except Daniel. She didn't rush. She never had. Lena moved like someone who trusted time to wait for her. Dark suit, minimal jewelry, calm expression that gave nothing away. The gallery leaned forward instinctively, not because she was dramatic, because she felt important. And influence, real influence, doesn't need attention. It bends it. Daniel watched her approach the stand. Every memory of the early years crashed into him at once. Late nights coding prototypes, cheap takeout eaten over blueprints, arguments about ethics that lasted until sunrise. She had been the first person to believe in him, not investors, not clients, Lena. And now she was walking into a courtroom where he was the accused, where she was the witness. She took the oath. Victor Langford stood, composed but tighter now. He knew the trial had shifted. Everyone did. "Ms. Kessler," Victor began, "you are the co-founder of Kessler Aeronautics?" "Yes." "And you worked closely with the defendant?" "Yes." His tone softened. "You know his character?" Lena paused. The room waited. "Yes," she said. "It wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. It was precise." Victor smiled slightly. "Then you understand how devastating it must be to testify today." Daniel felt the manipulation instantly. Frame her as reluctant, frame her as credible, frame her as tragic. But Lena didn't play along. "I'm not here because it's devastating," she said calmly. "I'm here because it's necessary." A ripple spread through the room. Victor adjusted course. "Did Daniel Hayes have the technical capability to orchestrate the breach?" "Yes." The word landed heavily. Daniel didn't flinch. Because capability wasn't guilt. Victor pressed. "And access?" "Yes." "And motive?" Lena hesitated. "Not long. Just long enough to create tension." "I don't believe so," she said. The courtroom shifted again. Victor's smile faded slightly. "You don't believe so?" "No." "Yet you discovered irregularities in internal security systems weeks before the breach." "Yes." "And you reported them?" "Yes." "To whom?" She glanced briefly toward Rowan, then back to Victor. "To the oversight contact assigned to us." The phrase slipped in quietly. Oversight contact, not consultant, not advisor. Oversight. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest, because that word meant hierarchy. It meant someone above both of them. Victor changed direction. "Ms. Kessler, did Mr. Hayes ever express dissatisfaction with government oversight?" "Yes." "Did he ever suggest moving company assets offshore?" "No." Victor paused. The narrative he wanted wasn't aligning. "So your testimony is that Mr. Hayes had capability, but not intent?" "Yes." "Then who, in your opinion, executed the breach?" Silence. Lena's eyes flicked toward Daniel. A look passed between them. Complex, old, unfinished. "I don't know," she said. Victor stepped closer. "But you suspected someone?" "Yes." "Who?" Another pause. Longer this time. The room leaned forward. Because pauses are dangerous. They force imagination to fill gaps. "I suspected the system itself," she said. Confusion rippled instantly. Victor frowned. "The system?" "Yes." "Please, clarify." Lena folded her hands calmly. "The security architecture had anomalies, patterns that suggested self-adaptive behavior." Daniel felt a chill. Self-adaptive, learning, changing. Like a model rewriting itself. Victor shook his head slightly. "You're suggesting an automated system framed your co-founder?" "I'm suggesting someone designed it too." A murmur spread. Because now the breach wasn't just a crime, it was authorship. Again. Victor's tone sharpened. "Ms. Kessler, are you aware of Project Mirror?" The room froze. Daniel's heartbeat slowed. Lena didn't look surprised. "Yes." Victor's eyes narrowed. "How?" "I was briefed after early funding." Daniel's breath caught. Early funding. Which meant before he even realized government interest existed. "You never told Mr. Hayes?" "No." "Why not?" Her voice softened. "Because they said he couldn't know." The words hit like a quiet explosion. Daniel felt betrayal rise, then stall, because her expression held something else. Not deception, protection. Daniel stood. "Your Honor, may I cross-examine?" The judge nodded. He approached slowly, not angry, not accusing, searching. "Lena," he said softly. She looked at him fully now. For a moment, the courtroom disappeared. "You knew about Project Mirror," he said. "Yes." "And you stayed." "Yes." "Why?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Because I believed I could control how close they got to you." The room reacted, but Daniel didn't. He just watched her. "You were watching me too," he said. "Yes." The honesty hurt more than denial would have. "Were you placed in my life?" he asked. She shook her head. "No." "Introduced?" "Yes." A strange echo of Mara's confession earlier. Daniel felt the pattern tightening. "You knew they were modeling me." "Yes." "And you still built the company with me." "Yes." "Why?" Her eyes softened slightly. "Because you weren't behaving the way they predicted." That answer landed differently. Not as betrayal, as defiance. Daniel's voice lowered. "You said you suspected the system." "Yes." "Do you believe I was framed?" "Yes." The word hit harder than any accusation. Victor rose immediately. "Objection! Speculation!" "Sustained," the judge said. But the damage was done. The jury heard it. Everyone heard it. Daniel felt a shift, a subtle tilt in perception. The room was no longer looking at him as the villain. Now, he was the variable. He leaned closer. "You said earlier the breach might be a rescue." Lena's eyes widened slightly. "I didn't say that." "You thought it." A pause. Then quietly, "Yes." The room went still. "Rescue from what?" Daniel asked. Her voice dropped. "From becoming what they wanted you to become." The words carried weight. Fear, history, truth. "What did they want me to become?" She hesitated, and for the first time since entering the courtroom, Lena looked afraid. Someone who could influence decisions without being seen. The implications spread slowly. Daniel felt cold. "You mean power?" "Yes." "And the breach stopped that?" "I think someone inside Project Mirror changed the trajectory." The phrase echoed something the judge had said. Someone not supposed to exist. Someone rewriting the model. Daniel stepped back. A new possibility emerged. The breach wasn't a correction. It wasn't punishment. It was sabotage of the system itself, which meant someone inside was helping him. But who? Victor approached again, voice sharper. "Ms. Kessler, are you saying this trial is the result of internal conflict within a classified program?" "Yes," gasps, because now the room wasn't just a courtroom. It was a battlefield between invisible forces. The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Kessler," she said carefully, "do you believe Mr. Hayes is currently in danger?" Lena didn't hesitate. "Yes." "From whom?" Silence, long, heavy. She turned toward the gallery. Her eyes scanned the faces, stopped. Not on Rowan, not on Victor, not on Daniel, on Mara. Daniel's stomach dropped, because Mara didn't look shocked. She looked prepared. And here's the question that changes everything. If Lena believed someone inside Project Mirror rescued Daniel, why was she suddenly looking at his wife like she was the one holding the knife? Every story reaches a moment where the truth stops hiding. Not because someone reveals it, because it becomes too heavy to carry silently. When Lena's eyes settled on Mara, the entire courtroom felt it. A shift, a fracture, a new center of gravity. Daniel turned slowly toward his wife. She didn't look away. She didn't deny it. She simply watched him, calm, steady, almost relieved. And in that calmness, something inside Daniel finally understood. This was never just a trial. It was a reveal. The judge spoke first. "Miss Kessler," she said carefully, "are you suggesting Mrs. Hayes is connected to Project Mirror?" The question landed like thunder disguised as conversation. Mara exhaled slowly. Before Lena could answer, Mara stood. "I think it's time we stop pretending," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Authority doesn't raise itself. It settles into a room. Victor Langford froze. Rowan stiffened. Even the judge's posture changed slightly. Because suddenly, Mara didn't look like a spouse caught in chaos. She looked like someone stepping into position. "Sit down, Mrs. Hayes," Victor said quickly. "No," Mara replied calmly. "I believe I'm the one this conversation has been orbiting." The gallery erupted into whispers. The judge raised her hand. "Approach." Mara walked toward the front. Every step precise, measured, deliberate. Daniel felt something deep inside him split open. Not just betrayal, not just shock, recognition. He had seen this version of her before, in meetings, in negotiations, in moments when she suddenly seemed ahead of everyone. He had thought it was intelligence. Maybe it was, but maybe it was something else too. "Your Honor," Mara said, "I request permission to address the court." The judge hesitated, then nodded once. "You may speak." Mara turned toward Daniel, and for the first time since the trial began, her eyes softened. "I never wanted you to find out like this." The sentence cut deeper than accusation. "What are you?" Daniel asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned toward Rowan. "Tell them," she said. Rowan shook his head slowly. "No." The word carried fear, real fear. Mara's expression didn't change. "I didn't ask," she replied. Silence stretched. Then Rowan swallowed. "She's part of the original architecture." The room froze. Architecture. Not subject, not observer, structure. Daniel felt his heartbeat echo in his ears. "What does that mean?" he asked. Mara looked back at him. "It means I wasn't assigned to watch you," she said softly. "I helped design the system that did." The words shattered the last illusion. Daniel stepped back instinctively. "You designed Project Mirror?" "Yes." The simplicity of her answer felt unreal. "Why?" he whispered. She breathed slowly. "Because we believed the world was becoming too complex for reactive decision-making." Her tone carried no apology, only explanation. "We built a model to identify individuals who could influence global outcomes before they reached positions of power." Daniel's voice tightened. "And then what?" "We guided them." "Manipulated them," he corrected. She didn't argue. "Yes." The courtroom held its breath. Daniel felt rage rise, then falter. Because beneath everything, he still saw the woman he loved. "How long?" he asked. "How long have you known me?" "Since before the scholarship," she said. His stomach dropped. "Since before college?" "Yes." The timeline rearranged itself brutally. Chance meetings, perfect opportunities, introductions that felt serendipitous. None of it had been random. "You built my life," he said. "No," she corrected gently. "You built it. I shaped probabilities around you." The phrasing felt colder than any confession. Lena spoke quietly from the stand. "You were the architect," she said to Mara. "Yes." "And the breach?" Lena asked. Mara's gaze shifted. Something darker flickered there. "I didn't create the breach." The words surprised everyone. Daniel felt confusion spike. "Then who did?" he asked. Mara hesitated, and that hesitation carried weight. "Someone who broke the model." Rowan nodded faintly. "The subject who rewrote the architecture," he said. The judge leaned forward. "The one you mentioned earlier?" "Yes," Rowan said. "They were never supposed to exist." Daniel's mind raced. "Who?" Silence. Then Mara spoke. "You." The word landed like gravity. Daniel stared at her. "No." "Yes." "I didn't design anything." "You didn't consciously," she said softly. But you changed the system simply by refusing its predictions. He shook his head. That doesn't make me an architect. It does when the model starts rewriting itself around your behavior. The implication unfolded slowly. Every time he chose ethics over advantage, every time he rejected power structures that would have elevated him faster, every time he made decisions that broke probability curves, he wasn't failing expectations, he was reshaping them. The breach, Mara continued, wasn't a correction, it was a fracture. By who? She swallowed. By me. Gasps filled the room. Daniel's chest tightened. You framed me. No, she said quickly. I exposed the system. I forced it into the open. By destroying my life. Her voice cracked slightly for the first time. I thought it would free you. The room felt heavier suddenly, because intention and consequence rarely align. Daniel stared at her. Why now? Because the program wasn't ending, she said quietly. It was escalating. To what? Her answer came almost as a whisper. To you replacing me. The words changed everything. You were grooming me to take control, he said slowly. Yes. And you didn't want that. I wanted you to choose it freely or reject it entirely. Daniel's breathing slowed. So this trial forces the system into visibility, she finished. The judge sat back, processing. The prosecutors stood speechless. Rowan looked exhausted. Lena watched Daniel with something like hope. And Daniel realized the truth wasn't clean. It wasn't hero versus villain. It was control versus choice. You designed me to become powerful, he said quietly. Yes. And then you sabotaged the system to give me freedom. Yes. And now, he asked. Mara's eyes softened again. Now you decide whether the system lives or dies. Silence fell, heavy, permanent. Daniel felt the weight of it. Not just a trial, not just a marriage, a civilization-scale decision disguised as a courtroom moment. If predictive control could shape leaders, was destroying it moral or dangerous? Would removing it create chaos or freedom? The moral line blurred completely. He looked at Mara, the woman who loved him, the woman who built him, the woman who betrayed him to save him, or saved him by betraying him. He wasn't sure which, and that uncertainty became the real question. Because here's the dilemma that divides people forever. Is it more ethical to guide humanity toward safer outcomes, or to allow true freedom even if it leads to disaster? Daniel inhaled slowly, and for the first time since the trial began, he felt something like control return. Not over the courtroom, over himself. And when he spoke, the entire room leaned closer, because whatever he said next would rewrite more than one life.